Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, I'm going to go through some of the things that we saw at the NAB show in New York this past week that I think might be interesting to everybody. And specifically, I'm actually going to give a demo of a piece of gear that we saw there from Magewell that we think is just incredibly impressive and relatively affordable for most studios. So it's something we're actually going to do a quick overview demo of here on the show after I go through some of the things we saw at the NAB show. So before we get started, I want to invite everybody, if you'd like to join us on air, you can either leave a comment or give us a call, and we will have somebody from the studio get you on. Anything that you ask in comments, we'll try to respond to it right here on the show. So if we don't know, we'll say it. But if we do, we'll try to give you an answer. Okay, so let me get started first with a general overview. The New York NAB show is sort of the smaller sibling to the Las Vegas NAB show, which tends to be just enormous, spanning, probably 3 or 4 times the floor space of the New York show. But because it's a smaller show, it actually is a lot easier to get one-on-one time with some of the people in the different booths. And that, I think, is great. So while the Vegas show is bigger, I think the smallness of the New York show makes it much more approachable and in many ways highly valuable if you're really trying to dig in and get more detailed information about products. So on that level, I'd recommend anybody that can be in the area, it's definitely worth the trip to the show. But there are so many things there, and a lot of them are just ridiculously expensive. So what I wanted to do was sort of cover things that I think would be more specifically interested to everybody here, and we can go from there. But before I get to that, we'll start that with a slideshow. But let me sort of go through and say hello to everybody that's already watching here. So we have Sean from Oregon. Sean, thank you. Good to see you here again. We have JP. JP, thank you for joining us from Cape Town. Definitely appreciate it. We have Marco. Marco, great to see you here. Thank you. So we have Vlad. Vlad, as always, thank you for joining. And we had EduNet. Could you show an example? Oh, no, that I think is an old comment. So never mind with that. We should be good. So all right, I think we have a few more here. We have Eric Goodman is here. Eric, good to see you here. Thank you. Let's see. Bill Mew. Bill. Always good to see you, Bill. Thank you for joining us here. Okay, so I picked out a few products that I think have some unique value, either setting a direction or as a component that somebody, in your average studio would actually, have a reason to integrate. So what I want to get started with is a look at a camera we saw by BirdDog. So I have a lot of notes because there's a lot of details and I can't keep all of the details in my head. So if you see me look down, that's me just trying to keep up with the notes. But I want to make sure that I do these products justice. So this is a camera called the X120. So it's a sub $1,000 camera. It has slightly smaller than a 1/4 inch Sony sensor in it. So the Sony sensors are definitely higher end sensors. So even though I didn't get to play with the camera directly, the Sony sensor itself sort of speaks to a better quality camera. It's not just sort of the standard sort of surveillance camera type thing repackaged. It's a real production camera. So this is a 1080p or 720p camera, and it covers the whole range of frame rates, including the production frame rates, 59.94 and 29.97. So it can integrate in multiple environments that you would want to use it in. So it does H.264 encoding, so sort of standard encoding for all that. It does NDI HX2 and NDI HX3, in addition to, I believe, traditional NDI HX, traditional NDI, like full bandwidth. So it sort of covers a lot of space there on that front. And it also has HDMI and SDI ports on the back. And it has a USB-C port that would allow you to plug it in and use it as a webcam. So sort of a general purpose PTZ camera that covers a lot of different use cases. The other thing, though, and what makes this interesting, is that this camera has Wi-Fi built in. And while I would not recommend Wi-Fi as a your first choice in connectivity, especially for a camera, it can get you out of trouble in a pinch where there's just no way to run a wire, but you need a shot from that location. And so what you're seeing here on the back of this is the wireless antennas that are coming out. You're also seeing it's an optional V-mount battery pack mount that they have for the camera that will allow you to sort of place it somewhere with a hefty V-mount battery and connect to it over, probably in this case, NDI HX2, which would be the lowest bandwidth requirement, over Wi-Fi. It can work well if you're in the right environment, but the caveat always is if you have a venue which is going to have a lot of people fill it up with cell phones and everything, make sure that whatever you're doing for your Wi-Fi connection is isolated and doesn't take interference from everybody's mobile devices. But that being said, it really fills a niche in the market for that type of capability. And I haven't seen something like this since really the earliest new tech NDI converters, which had Wi-Fi as one of the options they had. So this is great to see as an option. Again, just one of the tools that are available in a camera that is, for the price, definitely, worth a look. So that's from BirdDog. So the next thing that I came across that I'd been looking at is from Blackmagic. And this is another ATEM switcher. This is one of the larger units they have. So it's the HD800 ISO. So this is just under $4,000. So I know, we're moving up in price, but when you look at this in terms of like total capabilities, there's a lot of things in here that are, could actually, when you add it up as the total equipment spend, it could make sense in a production budget based on the types of things you do. So this is an 8-input switcher, so SDI inputs. It doesn't have HDMI, so if you needed HDMI, you'd need converters to get them to SDI. But it can do embedded audio. It can do external audio from a mixer. It has a Fairlight mixer built into it. So Fairlight was a company that Blackmagic bought probably a decade ago, and they were known for audio processing. So this has multi-channel. It's got parametric EQ, compressors, noise gates, limiters, expanders. So it is a fairly comprehensive audio processor in addition to letting you switch everything. It does 4-layer super sources, which is how you do sort of the multi-box effects in the ATEM world. It has a built-in streamer and encoder. Has built-in 2 terabyte of storage, but with a ton of external options for bringing in, having other types of, storage media attached to it. So really pretty full-featured. And it does 8 ISO records. So this gives you the ability to take those sources that are coming in and record them in isolation. So as you can see, it's not huge, but it's bigger than your standard ATEM by quite a bit, probably about 3 times as large in each direction. But you'll notice that it has a screen on it. And that's another thing that makes this potentially attractive. you can set this up and control audio, control video settings, things, like proc amp style controls on each of the video inputs. You can set up your super sources, and get everything dialed in for that. You also can do things like paint your cameras. So if you had Blackmagic cameras that were connected to this, you would be able to go there and make adjustments to the color and all the traditional camera settings. So that gives you an awful lot of control from a very compact interface that definitely can fit on a desk. You sort of have this, and as you see here, the laptop next to it to run the additional software options they have for doing things like overlays, graphics, and other things. And this can actually be a very effective mobile production framework. The other thing, which isn't a photo from NAB, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the scope of what this has. It has like 4 outputs, so like 2 multi-views and 2 aux outs. It has program out. It has XLR audio ins and outs. It has stereo ins for doing like music pre-show or whatever you want. It actually has a built-in, if you look at the Ethernet ports, you have these 4 little ports. There's 1 port sort of at the top row and 4 ports below. That's actually a mini switch built in. So you could actually have the 1 port plugged into the internet connectivity in a venue, and then use the other 4 ports to hook up local devices or, cameras for PTZ control. All those things are, baked into this unit. So definitely an interesting unit. And I know a lot of people will use the ATEM line. They tend to use that in combination with something else. This may be a way to sort of do it all in one, where you can have a laptop and this as your switcher and sort of run your whole production from a single small space. So thought that was interesting based on, some of the things that we saw there. And again, this is just under $4,000. All right. We have a few more comments here. So before I go to the next one, let me sort of try to keep up with the comments as we go along. So we have Obsessive Audio from Toronto. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us, Obsessive. And Haken from Stockholm. Haken, thank you. Great to have you here. So Bill is saying that he recently purchased the new Magewell Director Minis, which has 2 HDMI and 2 USB for webcams, 3 NDIs and 3 SRTs. Great for video capture device, and can send SRT or NDI to vMix. So yeah, I think that Magewell has really been raising the bar on a lot of these smaller, affordable devices. And we're actually going to be talking about that right at the end. We have the Ultra Encode AIO, which actually blew us away when we saw it. And I know it's been out for a while, but we hadn't had a real chance to be hands-on. And when we saw it, we were like incredibly impressed by that. So that's something we're going to touch on there. But thank you, Bill. I agree with you, though. And let's see. So Bill is saying he has the HD8 ISO, and they had a 20% sale. So yeah, I mean, I think, Bill, if you had comments on it, I'd love you, feel free to share them. But we saw it and thought it was a really good all-in-one solution for people that was fairly portable. So thanks for sharing that, Bill. And let's see, do we have anything else? Okay. Okay, so let's see. So we have... and so Bill is saying that the HD8 ISO includes a streaming bridge built in. And it's rumored to be getting an SRT soon. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't had real hands-on time with this other than a little time at the booth. But, yeah, it looks like it's... And because it's software, one of the things I found with Blackmagic is that a lot of the... Even though they're a hardware company, a lot of the value they bring is in the software side, and they continue to update their products, like with firmware upgrades that really enhance them. So, I mean, even with like some of their older cameras, like the was Pocket Cinema 4K. I mean, they're still doing firmware upgrades with some real enhancements to that. So I like the Blackmagic philosophy, and they're also very, very good about sort of respecting you as a producer, as a content creator. They don't try to like capture your media assets so you can like build subscriptions that you can't get out of, things like that. And they've actually talked about that. So I respect their ethos as a company as well. So thank you. That's a great update on that. So do I think they're going to come out with a 4K ATEM Mini? It is possible, but I think it's really going to be what's the fit in the market. If you're going to use a Mini, how many people sort of fit into that demographic, or they're going to be taking that in? And once you go 4K, that's like 4 times the bandwidth per input. So that means there's a lot more processing that needs to take place. 4K also means you're going to go sort of H265 for encoding in all likelihood, which adds more processing overhead on that front too. So it is very possible, but I think their take may be the Mini is really settled in the HD world. And then when you go up to their higher end ATEM systems, they sort of move into the 4K world and the 8K world. So I think they have the Constellation, which is 8K, which, you know, is a pretty hefty unit for switching. So they have a lot of stuff. Would it be great? Absolutely. It may be nice if they could do something where you could have certain numbers of 4K inputs and maybe more standard HD inputs, and sort of let you switch between them. So maybe something like that. But I'd love to see it. They're definitely in the value space of the market in terms of, you know, what you get for price. So be cool to see that. So JP saying, are we really in the 4K space now? And I think that that actually is, it's a good question, because I don't think on the streaming side we are. I think, though, that on the capture side, especially if you're sort of capturing assets that you may want to repurpose in the future, repackage, trim, recut, getting those in higher resolution do give you lots of options. Not only that, but even if you're working in an HD environment, you could find yourself wanting to sort of punch into a 4K, where you could sort of say, okay, I can reframe this shot. I didn't have a good angle, so I just took a sort of a wide angle, but I really want to sort of cut in and move to a certain piece, and do that, you know, as you move through the video. So you could be cutting different segments of the 4K in almost like a virtual PTZ style. And, you know, that will give you some interesting shot capabilities that you wouldn't get if you were all HD, you know, without losing that HD quality through every cut. So it's a good question. And, you know, and I think that's the challenge in the market right now, is when to jump in fully into 4K as a universe. But I still see a lot of 1080, 60. So, the 3G world still very viable out there. So we'll see where it goes. It is an interesting time. So how can I say the Magewell AES67 is a great product for NDI audio? Yeah, I mean, I think NDI is, there's a lot of reasons people may turn around it from a studio side and say, I want to go with, SMPTE 2110, and, there are other, things on that front. There are great things, from the folks at Ordinate with Dante. I do think if you are in an NDI world, it is only getting better, and the focus for these individual components, like audio versus video, routing and sort of native switching and native control, all of that's improving, and that's something we'll touch on in a little bit. But yes, again, a lot of love on this side for Magewell, and so that's something that as I said, we'll jump into with the Ultra Encode AIO at the end of the show. But thank you, Hakan. Okay, so let me sort of move forward here. And this was something that we saw that was just interesting. So there is a company called Forecast Consoles, and they have drawer-worthy production desks and editing desks, all with built-in racks. I mean, if you're into LED edge-illuminated desks, they got those sitting there with lots of bling, if that's what you want in your studio. But they also had something there that I've heard about for a while, but I hadn't really seen or gotten to experience. And that is something that's called directional audio. And so if you look here on that little grill across the top of this rack space, this is just on one of their production desks. What they have is a way to take an audio feed and focus it to one sweet spot right on, the listening area where somebody would be seated in front of that. And what it means, the way this works, is that audio gets canceled outside of this one sort of sweet spot bubble you're in. So if you're sitting in that right space, you hear it full volume, very clear. As you start to move off axis from that, that goes away. And to the point where if you're sort of right off to the side of it, you don't hear it at all, even though it's normal volume for the person sitting in front of it. And I just thought there were so many real use cases for this today. So if you had something like an insert studio, they have a version of this which has a parabolic mic, which again does the same sort of pinpoint to a specific location to pick up audio. This is something where you could just have somebody sit in front of a screen, hear the remote, talk to them, but it wouldn't have the same issues you have sort of with your traditional open speakers and microphones, where you get that feedback loop and audio cutting out when they get return audio coming from the set. So this we thought is really cool. But they also have a version that sort of sits at the edge of a table. So you got to have somebody like walk up to here, and they only hear it when they're standing right in front of it at a certain height. So we just thought this was a really cool technology. I don't have pricing or anything on this yet, but just something that we thought was really interesting. I could also see this, by the way, for comms, where if you don't want people wearing headsets all the time so they don't have awareness of anything else going on around them, this is something where you could have comms where each station hears and can talk just to that one area, but stations next to them could have a separate comms feed, and again, be able to interact, but still have awareness of everything that's going on in the control room around them. So I could see this for lots of use cases. Just thought it was a really, really cool technology, though. So I wanted to share that. So let's see. Let me go to the next one. I got a chance to say hello to Tim at the vMix booth. Again, it was nice. I actually got to spend time with him and just talk a bit about, sort of the process, for how development works there, and some of the things that they get to do. And it was just a really nice one-to-one conversation. And again, that was part of what I meant when I said you get something unique at the NAB shows in New York, and that's part of it. But nicest guy in the world. I can tell you flat out, everybody that I've dealt with from the vMix team are great guys. So if you do get a chance to talk to Tim, definitely, take advantage of it. He's a fun guy, really genuine, and knows his stuff about the product, obviously. So just wanted to share that. It was just good to catch up with them. So back to gear. So this is something that isn't released yet. They were showing it there as sort of an early example, but this is something from Vizrt, and it's their Flex 2-stripe controller. So you may have seen that earlier this year, I think like in January, NewTek released a one stripe, sort of very compact version of the Flex controller. And what made this interesting was that it was all NDI based. So everything in and out was all NDI control, all NDI routing. So it was really the first clean break in the production space from sort of your traditional switcher design, where it didn't care what it was controlling. If it was NDI and could talk NDI, you could work with it. And that was incredibly powerful. It also took the switcher, especially in the compact space, it took that switcher controller to a different place because it gave you audio controls and sort of a zoom rocker with positioning controls. So things like that. So it really became a true all-in-one. The other thing that it did is it made it very easy to assign stripes, which is basically the sort of rows of buttons are called stripes. So it made it very easy to assign stripes to things dynamically. And when you did that, it could change the colors of the buttons on those stripes. So you'd know just by looking at your surface, I wasn't on my standard sort of red, green, live preview stripe. I was on one of my mix effect stripes and I had something different. And it also had these labels that you had sort of seen on the little LCD screens there. Let me see if I have a better shot here. So this is sort of it. So this is clearly a much bigger unit. But the nice thing here is that it is much more programmable than the previous unit. It has two stripes. It can connect to multiple devices simultaneously. So one of the things you could do is you could have your bottom stripe connected to a local, in this case, like a local TriCaster. You could have the upper stripe connected to a cloud switcher for doing, backup, for doing, secondary streams. So it gives you, this abstraction now where I don't really care where any of the actual switching gear is. I just am connected to it, controlling it all here, and monitoring it in total. So you can do things in this, like when I go to inputs, like if I use a macro to go to input, I could actually reload sets of macros and reprogram buttons dynamically. So things that are more Stream Deck-ish now are baked into this. So that's something where, it could make productions easier. As soon as I switch to one of my MEs, I now could have macros set up to do different things based on the ME I was in. So really cool stuff like that. So really like this. I know this is it is comparable to the current two stripes sort of in general market price. So I don't have fixed pricing. I didn't really know that yet. But the current two stripe controller from NewTek is like $13,000. So it's not an inexpensive thing. But the reason I think it is so interesting, especially if you're not in that TriCaster world, because there's, if you're built around a big TriCaster infrastructure, those types of prices could definitely make sense as, for large studios. But it's the direction that you see here. This is really creating that abstraction layer, taking the Stream Deck philosophy and sort of baking that now into a full production console. And I think we're going to see more of that. This is probably the first step there. But it's abstract, local to cloud, abstract, function to button. All those things are configurable. So really thought this was just a cool, unit. And the fact that everything, when you change it, changes little LCD screens. I'm not sure exactly what type of technology you're using for that, but little screens on top of and below the buttons, so you know what's there. So even if things are changed dynamically, you have different colors, different labels. All that stuff can happen as you move, as you move through your production. So just a very cool philosophical look at how switching and production control can be changing. And the other piece to this is that it doesn't need to be the only unit That's sort of the flip to this. Not only can it control a whole lot of stuff by itself, I could have a smaller Flex controller or another full-size one working with it, connected to the same box, but doing something different. So if I needed somebody to run an ME set to do something that I was doing for, on-screen displays inside a set, for iMag, other stuff, that maybe latency issues on that, but you get the general point. I could have multiple people working on one box through multiple controllers. So it sort of flipped the model that way too. Really cool stuff, really interesting technical repositioning in the market for how controllers operate. So thought that was really cool and something I wanted to share. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, and the other thing is this actually has some built-in audio control, but it's not the same as the small one. The small one's really meant for the all-in-one single person. This is meant for sort of a bigger production where you have an A1 audio position handling that. So that just gives you things for talkback and monitoring and your phones. So, but it still is thinking of those things as part of your basic package for audio and video. So we also got a chance to go over and visit PTZOptics, and those guys are again, just there's so many great people in this industry, and they're another group that I think are incredibly open and looking to learn what the market is doing and how they can innovate around their products. And we've always had a great relationship with them. But one of the things that I wanted to take a moment to sort of point out here is they have a very different camera out now, and they released it probably about 4 months ago. It is something we're going to be doing a full review on. I've had it for a little bit of time, and I just, with so many different things, I haven't gotten to finish the review. But this is something that we were really impressed by, and mainly it's because it is a sort of, I forget the exact price. I think it's like $700, $750, something in that ballpark. But it is NDI, so it's an NDI HX2, HX3. It has webcam capabilities, so you can plug it in as a webcam. HDMI out. It is a 1080p. It can take, they have sort of mic in on here. So you have the ability now to do a lot with this. But one of the things it also has is there's a little switch right next to the mic port. And that does something really, really interesting. So I actually have the camera here. So let me see if we switch over to me, and I can sort of show you a few things on this camera. So you can see it's got, which is a little different. I'll try to keep this in focus. It has sort of noise canceling dual microphones up here. So that gives you the ability to just talk to it like you would a webcam if you want. But it also has the mic input on the back, so you could put a wired microphone on it. The other thing that I think is probably the most interesting, like a traditional camera, it has the quarter-inch, quarter 20 mount, but it also has quarter 20-inch mounts on the side. And the reason it has that is that you can actually, let me sort of just put this over here so you can see, it gives you the ability, if we can sort of cut to this as a camera over here. I don't know whether I had this in. Let me switch this over. So what you see here, let me take the overlays off. I'm sorry, guys. So this actually has a portrait mode as well as the traditional landscape mode. And this is something, if you are creating content for social media, so this could be things that you do where it would be Instagram or just things that you want to do for YouTube Shorts, you have that ability here. The other thing, though, and this is something that not everybody sort of thinks about, this is a 1080p camera. But if you wanted to do something that could integrate into 4K productions, when you have it this way, sort of this is now sort of the vertical in the portrait mode, is 1920. And if you think of 4K, 4K is just a basically 21 to 2160. So you could do something which would fill almost an entire 4K frame with this, if you could work within that. So think of things where you do chroma key. I think that could be a wonderful option for doing chroma key, where you want it to capture the maximum resolution, even if you shrunk it down to fit inside of a 1080. Having those extra pixels to work with when you're doing that keying and trying to smooth the edges. That could be a great use case for this that goes beyond sort of the traditional social media style input. And it also comes with a light, that's sort of a battery powered light that hooks onto the top. So it's a really cool all-in-one unit that has a lot of production use cases. It's a box cam style, so it has the zoom in and out. It doesn't have the pan and tilt, obviously, but really, really useful for a lot of different, potential cases. And I think that's what we were looking at. How do we find things that are still innovative, that are still, trying to push things, forward, compared to what was done in the past. And I love that type of thinking that we're seeing here from PTZOptics on this. It's a great example of, what you can do within today's technology to push the envelope. So really, really love that. So before I get to next week, let me sort of try to catch up with everything on the comments side. So Vlad is asking, is ATEM really that useful for vMix? I think what I'm seeing is that people in more complex productions, and that doesn't mean that they're massive productions, but more complicated ones, will typically have multiple systems that can be focused on different aspects of a production. vMix can be incredibly flexible, but the thing you get from the ATEM side is it is something that you could do where there's almost no latency because it's a hardware switcher. So you could use that to say, I'm going to use that to control, projectors on large screens at some type of event I'm doing, whether it's Barco or, other types of projection systems. And I will do my stream in vMix where I have to do more integration of different types of elements. So different use cases for these. And, I don't think, you would necessarily, if you were fully invested in the vMix ecosystem and that's how you do almost everything, it wouldn't necessarily make sense. But I think there are sort of many hybrid cases where it could be really useful to have both. And I think there is a fair number of people who are in the vMix world who use the ATEM minis and other things. But we also, on the show, we reach out to people who aren't necessarily a primary vMix user and are using other tech. So we look at this as sort of a general what's useful in the marketplace. And, whether you're a vMix user, TriCast, or in the Blackmagic universe, all of those we think, we want to share what we saw. And this is just something we thought was a potential good fit in multiple use cases. Thanks, Vlad. So let's see. Sean is saying he tried vMix Call in the new 27 with Zoom integration. Do you think it will replace vMix Call? I don't. I think each one has its place. And when you're dealing with Zoom, there are certain benefits because it's usually already well permissioned inside of, sort of the firewall and security framework in a lot of the corporate spaces. But it also is fairly limited. You get a cap on total aggregate bandwidth you can download. Based on that, you can end up with lower resolution video coming in. So it's part of an entire framework. And we sort of view that here, even from the Norlet side. We see this as sort of a continuum of options for bringing in guests from, Zoom, which sort of sits at the most ubiquitous, most widely accepted, all the way up to what gives me the highest quality, the most control, is workflow friendly, things around that. So I don't think it's going to replace. I think it's, the folks at vMix probably see it in a similar way, where it's just a continuum of options, and you want to use the best option for the use case that gives you the highest quality in the end product. And I think, like I said, they're different horses for different courses, as they used to say in the old days. I'm just dating myself. I don't know why I say things like that. Anyway, so Vlad is saying the Flex 2 stripe looks like X keys on steroids. Yeah, I mean, these things are really, they're designed for serious productions, where that's probably a bad term. I think, for large scale productions that involve larger crews, multiple pieces of gear that all need to be integrated. And so it's priced and designed form factor wise to address that piece of the market. But it's the thing that was most interesting is just philosophically where that's pointing. And it is definitely that sort of X keys, Stream Deck on steroids type of approach to building out production control. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. So I think the XL, the Stream Deck XL is going to be like maybe in a few years the extra small version, and there's just going to be large footprint Stream Decks and things like that coming in. So definitely, I can see the market moving to a very different location in the future. Okay, so Vlad's also saying MIDI controller brands should also join NAB because they're part of the vMix ecosystem. Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of control mechanisms in place. NDI, OSC, MIDI, all of those are very valid sort of control frameworks. We've always had control around, things like Visca and Visca over IP, which were, again, designed to control a remote device and ask it to perform certain commands. So that ecosystem is building out. And so I think some of it will be, some things will just standardize on using certain protocols for certain functions. Others will just embrace a broader array of protocols and be able to, create these sort of composited boards. I mean, the Stream Decks that have the little dials, I think they're called Stream Deck Pluses. Those things are great for audio. They're great for control things like color adjustments, gamma brightness, positioning control. So we're already seeing the change in form factor. And I think that's going to go hand in hand with the protocols that those new form factors will embrace to make them really broadly compatible. So Martin is asking, is there a better way to stream, for example, into GoToWebinars using the GoToWebinar tool? Well, so there are a few things. I mean, when you're dealing with tools that were natively designed for the web, that typically means, and I don't mean, generals, like there are switchers and other stuff which are fairly broad and flexible. But I mean things like if you're dealing with, streaming to Teams or streaming to Zoom or to GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting or any of those types of frameworks, they were really designed around having a webcam and sort of all that sort of goes with that, and with the browser as the core front end. So I think what you're going to find is that there'll be devices like we had here, where you have things like, this, which will work with as a webcam. and you can plug those in, but they still give a much higher quality signal. There are also things where you'll have like the NDI webcam, which will allow you to do something like use, vMix, TriCaster, Wirecast, anything that can output NDI, and use that as your input into a traditional sort of meeting webinar platform. And I think, again, that's going to give you a lot more control. It isn't that I think the webcams themselves as a technical interface can deliver very high quality videos. So webcams themselves and the optics that tend to be really poor. But if you're feeding that from a higher end camera, a higher end switcher, you can create very compelling input. And, if you're doing a webinar where yours is the main display, it can be a fully produced webinar that people are watching where it looks like a professional broadcast switch, with roll-ins, lower thirds, any types of videos, transitions, all of that. It's just really being sympathetic to the bandwidth that you can feed up and how that will look going out. Because some of them do have caps, like 720 for certain things. So really small text on the bottom of PowerPoints wouldn't work well. But, if you're sympathetic to that, I think the quality of production can be very high. Okay, so let's see. He said, in case of streaming into Zoom, do you prefer screen sharing for presentations or having a separate video stream? Or do you put everything into a picture-in-picture? So my own personal is that I don't want to have to interact with Zoom once I'm in the product. I sort of, at that point, is like, I have a connection. And so really, almost everything I do when I'm doing Zoom is either with TriCaster or vMix, where I'll control everything through that. And that means I can do PowerPoints, I can switch to cameras. And because I can do that, then I have something like a Stream Deck that we were talking about, it makes it really easy for me to be interactive with the other people in that meeting, where if I showed something, it's very easy for me to jump back to a full camera or to put the camera as a picture-in-picture, and move it around the screen to where it doesn't interfere with a slide or something that I'm showing through a screen share. So I think it just gives you a lot more control. Both are perfectly valid. It's just how when I'm doing this, I don't like to have to worry about mechanics on the screen. I much rather have just a control surface and move around through that. And that tends to work for me. Everybody can be different. Okay, let's see. So yeah, I think we got this one already. So, all right. Okay, so unfortunately, we're still not getting Facebook comments in, but I hear that George Kennedy on Facebook is there. So George, hello, thank you for joining us. And Jeff is also there. So Jeff, thank you for joining us. Great to have you here. All right, so let me get back now. The last thing I wanted to touch on was the thing that we came away so excited about, which is the Magewell Ultra Encode AIO. And this sort of is slotted as an encoder, but it does a lot of different things. So sort of it supports a range of true encoding formats. So it's H.264, H.265, NDI HX2, NDI HX3. So I think those are the main encoding formats that it has. But it wraps those in a whole bunch of transport formats. So you can do like HLS, the TS formats for doing the streams over UDP and RDP. It has, let's see, RTMP and RTMPS. So you can stream to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, any of those. It has 8 channels of audio in an encode. So it's not just stereo pairs. So you could do feeds that people could then sort of pick different feeds from. It lets you schedule streams, which I think is very, very useful. But it lets you also record your streams. So it has things where you can record through different types of media devices, SD cards, USB. And you can also record to like NAS-based things that are across the web. So if you have that sort of, NLS or other types of storage, web-based storage, like network-based storage, you could record to that. A lot of cool stuff with that. Has a lot of ways to connect. So it does wireless. You can, I believe, plug in cell phones. You can have wired connections up. It is PoE. So it has redundancy and so failovers to other things in there. It actually supports HDMI and SDI, and you can mix the two. You could even mix them, what you encode on screen. So we'll actually give you a demonstration of that. It does auto upload. So when you finish encoding and say you recorded it on an SD card, you can automatically take and upload that to a Dropbox or a Google Drive or something like that. So this is like really, really great capabilities baked into this. And so what I want to do is, when we were there, what you're seeing this photo of, Ryan Brenneman, who's a great guy. He works with Magewell and does distribution in the U.S. He actually gave us this bottom unit that you see in the picture here to let us demo it today. So it's something I want to take a moment and sort of give you a quick walkthrough here. So let's get my cabling out of the way here. So I think we have a shot of this sitting over here. So this is the device here. So you can see it has a little monitor window on the front end. This is touch sensitive, so you can actually go and sort of make changes to it. It has a little QR code. So I could take my cell phone, point it to there, open a browser, which then has all the controls I need to control this. So really, really cool stuff in here. And the fact that it's a touchscreen means you can work with it, if you're standing right in front of it. But the other thing is, it is also fully browser controllable. And let me say there's a couple of things. This is a direct browser connect. They also have a cloud connection that allows you to remotely connect to the device, from across the internet. So if you had a client and you installed this there, or you had somebody that was at a venue and you needed an engineer in the studio to go and reconfigure something, they could come in through the Magewell cloud and connect to this. So what I want to do here is try to do a quick walkthrough. There's a ton of stuff here, and we, hopefully this is something we're actually interested ourselves in adding. This is something we really, really like. So if we can bring this in at some point, what I'd like to do is do a very detailed overview. But right now, I'm just going to sort of do a general walkthrough of the capabilities here. So the first thing is they give you a dashboard. And if you can't read this is saying low resolution preview. So what you're seeing here is because they're doing this over the net, they're just giving you, sort of like a frame a second or something like that. So you have some visual cue for what's set up. But this is the sort of the home page, the dashboard. The first thing you can do is you can see right here, you have two encode streams that you can do. You have your main stream and your substream. And you can turn around and set them for different encoding on each of these. You also can set up your audio. And that's something that, as I mentioned, you have up to 8 audio channels you can bring in. You also have, the mixes to say if I'm bringing the line in or line out and HDMI in audio, you can do level controls out of all of that. This also shows you all of your, basic settings here. And it's showing you utilization. So this is saying how much CPU and memory are being used by the way we have this set up. and it's showing you internet bandwidth in and out. So this has a a sort of a 1 gig internet on the rear, and that's what we're using. But this is sort of your baseline, so you know what's going on with the device. You can then look at your inputs. And as I mentioned, this has SDI, so it's 3G SDI. It has HDMI, and it goes up to 4K. And 4K, it's like DCI 4K. So it's 4096. It's not the 3840. But you can say, just use 3840, but it can encode and work with up to DCI 4K. So it can be very useful outside of the streaming world if you're actually capturing something that you're using in sort of the cinema 4K formats. It does that. So this gives you inputs for, you can have your SDI in, and that's just a camera we have over here coming in. We have the HDMI. You can also come back and say, I'd actually like this to come in sort of in different layouts where maybe I want to do a side-by-side here, or do something that's sitting in a corner, or flip around the side-by-side because I want things on different sides. So it has all of these. But one of the things you'll notice is that it does have some sort of like glitching as it makes that transition. So it's either going to do something where it puts up color bars, or you can have some video artifacting until it's pulled in and composited the new video coming in. So this is not made for like live switching, but this gives you options. So if you wanted to do something, say you're using this as a multi-view and you wanted to send, a couple of feeds coming back, you could do those as separate feeds and send that back SRT, which could be picked up downstream by somebody. If you're doing that 4K, these could be full, 1080 resolution videos coming in. So you have lots of options for this, but this lets you sort of set up the layout of what's coming in, picking SDI, HDMI, or some sort of mix. The other thing, though, is that you also can go in and do a lot more in-depth configuration on the signal. So you can, you could go in and say for the HDMI, for the SDI, I want to go and do, standard RGB or different sort of standard formats, which have, different color curve characteristics, and, that would give you different types of looks. So that's all things you can put in here. Different ways for, quantization, where if you want to do sort of full range, that means that you could have some of this will keep it within sort of a broadcast, what's traditionally broadcast friendly. The full range would be something where you would end up with having enough space for a traditional web stream where you can have really darker blacks and whiter whites. So it's sort of semi-high dynamic range for that. So it gives you lots of options for how this all comes together. Color formatting, saturation on the outputs, general color controls for all of this, and then the ability to sort of look at the status of the video signals that are coming in. So again, in one place. And again, these are all just the setup stuff that you have to get started. Then you can get into the encoding. And as I mentioned, there are 2 encoders that are baked into the Ultra Encode AIO. And these can be set up for totally different encodes, but you can then package these into different transports. And so that's the thing. If you remember when I was talking about, we had different ways to have transport data going through, transport framing going through. So if you're moving this, so you could turn around and say, I want my mainstream, which I'm going to go and send up as my live stream to YouTube, but I want my substream, which I'm going to send as SRT to somebody offsite, and have those set up, different types of packaging and encoding for those, and that's all done here. And again, you have a lot of parameters to deal with. You can de-interlace, so if you're still dealing with some interlace signals coming in, it can do automatic de-interlacing on those. It gives you, everything you can do for the audio streams for how you want to do this, to map channels and set all that up. So again, a lot of capability on setting up all your encodes. if you go over to the live, this is where you're saying, now, how do I want to send this out? And, you know, you can turn this on when you want to send these out. You can turn this on. So the way I have this set up right now is I have two SRT channels going out, one with the main feed and one with the main encode and one with the sub encode. And so I actually have those over in vMix. So if I do a switch over to my vMix UI, you can see here, this is my, let me sort of cut this over. This is my main video coming out, which is, you know, basically just, you know, this camera right over here. So I have a camera sitting over here that this is coming in on, and that's coming into vMix via SRT. The next thing I have, though, is, so let me cut to this. Sorry, I got an overlay sitting on here. So what you see here now is the substream, and this is the second one. One of the things that you can do here when you set this up is you can actually configure overlays on it. So I'm just going to switch over here. So I can come in here and say, what do I want to add as overlays on this? So you could do watermarks. You can do text layouts. It has the ability for you to upload a graphic to this and do those things as overlays here. So very cool stuff around, you know, you could have one thing which is a fully watermarked version that you may want to stream out for, you know, basically at a lower resolution for, you know, monitoring or reference, and you don't want people to record it remotely. So you have the watermarks on it, but you could have your mainstream come out, you know, clean with no watermarks or overlays on it. So very, very full featured for these types of things when you set it up. And the other thing is that you can actually come here and say, I want to use this not to do SRT, though that's one of the capabilities. I could just have this take and convert these signals to NDI. So I could take and I shut those off and I turn this on and say, now I'm doing HX3 output. And let me see if I go over to, yep, so let me turn the destination on over here. And let me open up a studio monitor right here. So let me see if I can open another one here. So there we go. So now if you come here, you'll see that the Ultra Encode now is putting out the mainstream over NDI HX3. So these types of things are incredibly flexible, and it's all controllable through the UI that you have here. That's a browser-based UI. So you could have this in a rack somewhere, put it in a closet, and you could do everything you wanted to around, you know, controlling and configuring all remotely. But the other thing that it has is that it gives you the ability to record. And this is something that I mentioned. And we have this set up now. I could turn on recording, and it would go to record on the SD card, which is plugged into the physical unit. We also have a NAS here that we sort of store all our main assets on. And I have that set up as well. But what is really, really cool with this is that I have the ability, when I set this up, to say, I want to take, when this is done, I want to download this. So I could have that, you know, I could just take right off the card, even if it's in a locked closet, I could take and download the video because I want to use it to start to do editing. I can also turn around and say, I want to upload this. So I could take this and say, I want to set this as an upload that goes to, you know, Google Drive or something like that, and I can send that up. I can also configure this so that when I finish my recording, it will automatically upload to a drive. And that gives me the ability now to work at a remote venue. As soon as I finish that production, it can go back and be uploaded to the cloud, which I could then have somebody start editing back at the studio if I'm at a venue. So really cool capabilities baked into this. But you start to see it isn't just your traditional sort of, I'm encoding to stream. This is a generic encoder that packs a lot of punch, and it's really just such a great general utility. It does the encoding, it does recording, it does uploads when you finish. It lets you do conversions. So I have the ability to turn around and say, I could have this at a remote site and do an SRT feed out from that remote site, or take an SRT feed, in and, work with that. So lots of different ways to use this. It is at, it sells for $799. And when you think of the number of roles that this can play inside a studio and the amount of control you have over it, especially remote control, because like Magewell's cloud service has the ability to let you connect to this device and then manage it from a remote location. This becomes a phenomenal general tool for almost any situation where you need to do encodes, transports, transforms. And we heard about it. We didn't get a chance to play with it, but absolutely love this as a device. And in reaching out to people that I really respect in this industry, they've had similar very, very positive things to say about this. So hopefully I will get to do a more in-depth look at this, especially if we're going to be getting this in to buy one of these for our studio. This would be something I definitely would tell you how we're setting it up in the different use cases that we see for it. So hopefully I'll have something in the future that does a much deeper dive, but I really just wanted to share this with you because to us, this is probably the winner of the day. There are so many other impressive things that we talked to, but just in terms of price point, functionality, flexibility, this, the Ultra Encode AIO we thought was phenomenal. And sort of our winner from NAB, even though it wasn't a new intro there, just really loved the unit. So wanted to share that with you. Okay, so let's see. We got a few more comments. Yes, so Ken's saying, thanks for the XML videos. He was wondering if there is a good way to display an XML file in vMix under data sources. He's trying to display result votes in the upcoming election. So the easiest way to do that, Kent, is to actually create a layout that you want inside GT title. You import the data in Data Sources Manager, map that data into things in the title, and then show the title. And this means that you could take with titles and show all different views of that same data set. So that would be one way. The other thing is, if there are other types of, and open source too, graphics packages, which could take that XML data and sort of reformat it into graphics that you may want to do, like bar charts and sort of pie charts that could show, different, different proportional voting information. So definitely stuff in there that you could do. But that would be the most straightforward way to do it. And I think you could make that work around your branding as well. So that would be what I would recommend. So Sean is asking if I've ever used the Pearl Nano. I have not. Now, I just said hi to somebody earlier that came in through Facebook, George Kennedy. And I know George has done a lot with the Pearl Nano and really likes, he does a lot of event-based work. And I know he's used that in different breakout rooms as a way to, potentially record and stream. So I can see if George has something he can share. I know we're not getting Facebook comments in through vMix Social, but somebody from the studio, if he does post, could relay that, or you could check Facebook after. But yeah, the Pearl Nano, lots of good things I've heard about it, but I have not used it hands-on. So, Tom, I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. So, any support we get is always very welcome. So, okay, let's see. So Sean is saying loves Data Sources Manager. So, yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, I think there is definitely a a lot that you can do within vMix proper from the GT title data sources, but it is just XML. So, and this is one of the things that I try to make sort of a thought process when I look at workflow. You don't have to stick with a single tool for an entire process. These tools, especially with things like NDI, have such great interoperability that if you found something in OBS that could produce great imagery around the XML data, you could use that to push it out as an NDI feed into vMix, which you could then composite into a layered input and put in one part of a screen with hosts talking around. So you have a lot of flexibility for how you think of workflows. So find the best tool you can that can integrate into what for you will be a manageable workflow, and try to leverage that, because I think that's how you constantly sort of push the envelope on what you're able to do in productions. So, all right, so let's see. Edgenet, thank you. I really enjoy everybody making the time to watch these shows. It's a lot of fun to be a part of this community and to get to share with you guys and get a lot of feedback and a lot of great ideas in return. So thank you all. I appreciate that. All right. So I know this has been a pretty long show by our normal show standards. So why don't we wrap this up? I will jump over to our post-show hangout, and we could talk a little more if there are any other questions. Otherwise, we just can wrap it up from there. If you can't join the post-show, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on the show, and we will see you next Friday. And until then, be safe, be well. If you can hang around, I'll see you in a moment in the post-show. Take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the post show. So hopefully you found this interesting. There are so many things you see when you go to a show like NAB, even in New York, where there's just so many different things. Trying to prune it down to things that you think could have broad interest is actually harder than you think. I mean, there's a lot of folks that we saw, and some like really in incredible gear, like the folks that actually sort of helped develop and open source the SRT protocol, High Vision. They have some incredible, encoders, transport, stream managers, all that. But they target a different spot in the market. So you're talking about devices that are, $10,000 to $15,000 a location to do things. So I think all of these things where you look at them and say, that's great, but for the typical studio, you may not have something like that, as being, the best spend of your money, compared to other things that you'd want to add. So it's always difficult, a lot of stuff is targeted around larger studios or very complex environments, multi-location environments. And there was a lot of that there. So what I tried to do is find the things which I thought sort of fit best for the types of things that I'm aware that people are doing. But, if there are other things that you guys are working on or trying to set up, always please share that. I definitely want to make sure we stay in touch on what's most interesting to all of you. All right, so we have Automation for vMix is saying hello. Automation, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us live. Always appreciate that. So Marco, so thank you, Marco. Glad you found it found it useful. So I was hoping, I was, there for pretty much all day on Thursday at the Javits Center in New York for the NAB show. So, I was hoping, if any of you were there, I would have been happy to meet. So, but I'll keep that in mind. Anytime I'm at a show and I'm going to be there and, somebody in our community wants to hook up, we'll definitely try to set up a time and get together. So, all right. So let's see. Okay. So Sean is saying he would love to see more on graphics integration solutions into hybrid events. Yeah, I mean that's something that I would definitely like to do more of. I mean, there's two sides. First, one of them is to really talk more about the full production workflow around hybrid events and different ways to do that. Specifically because I mean we already have a product that's sort of focused on that area with the neural net live to air side of things, and I think sort of looking at it in sort of the whole picture of how all of these pieces can all work together is something we're interested in. And graphics are a big piece of that. Graphics and data, sort of interactivity, feedback from audiences, feedback from remote panelists, things of that sort. So definitely something I'll look at doing before the end of this year in some of our shows. So. So you the man, Whit, good to see you. So he said he missed NAB and he missed most of today's show. So, hopefully, if there's anything, that you have that comes up as a question, just always, reach out to me in the comments on YouTube. I don't get to them as fast as I'd like, but I definitely try to get back to everybody that posts a comment, and, always feel free to reach out. Okay, so if you have any other questions or there are any other details you want, just get them in, because I know there's a bit of a lag between when you're hearing me and when I'm speaking. But this was a lot of fun. I know it was a longer show than usual, but I wanted to touch on the things we saw at NAB, but I also really. This is an unsponsored plug. I really, really liked the Ultra Encode AIO, and I just wanted to make sure that I shared that with you because I think it's something that could really fit in a lot of workflows that people have and a lot of the types of productions people do. And the other thing is it has an HTTP interface, so it sort of even fits in with our scripting mantra, so our ability to do things with that. So a lot of cool stuff with that I think, is why I wanted to spend the time talking about it. So Vlad's asking, what does GT mean in GT Title Designer? I don't know. That's a good question. I never really gave it much thought. I just took it as a name, GT. So I do not know what the GT stands for, but maybe somebody else out there does. But always a good stump the band kind of question, like that one. So I'll see if I can find that out. I could have asked Tim if I'd known that. If I had known that yesterday, I would have been happy to ask Tim that question, and I could have had a real answer for you. So Martin, thank you for that. I have to tell you, I mean, I haven't really thought about doing something with Patreon. What I never wanted to make happen is I never wanted somebody to feel like they were sort of second class in the channel. So I do have, I want to make sure that what we do, helps the broadest number of people, that could benefit from it. We have thought about it though, because there are a fair number of expenses that go with this. So it's something I will keep in mind, but I'd have to do it in a way that didn't make people feel either guilty for not doing it or feel excluded from things that I thought were cool, value things for them. So there may be things I could do which are more behind the scenes things that we could share in a Patreon context that were more curiosity type things rather than things that were some of the core of what we do. But I appreciate that one. I really do. There's a lot of people that work behind the show that have full-time jobs at Neural Net. So they really are, I definitely appreciate everybody here that works with me on this. I'm putting this show out, and everybody, out in the community that make it worth doing, that have the response and the feedback. And, I want to do what's right for the community. So that's something I definitely have to think of. But I appreciate the sentiment, Martin, and we'll give it some consideration. So thank you for that. Dave Edwards says the GT means Gran Turismo. So you have a special chair that you have to get with that, with the the center locking safety straps there. So it's so fast. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that one. So let's see. Marco was saying he agrees. As I said, guys, I really do appreciate this. So let me think about this, because I do want to do what helps us make the channel as valuable as possible, and anything we could do from that would be things we'd fund to content that would make it on air. So thank you. I appreciate that sentiment. That's really very very heartening for that. So I appreciate it. So, okay, so Kent is sort of jumping back to last week's show. He's asking about XPath in the edit data source window. Just wondering if there is a good example out there. So I tried in last week's show, I tried to go through a little more in what XPath does. So what I'd probably recommend is if you could look at the presentation that I have there, which sort of goes through different XPath examples. And I think that we have that uploaded. There's, a PowerPoint with that in that. And use that as a start point. And there are a lot of good references on YouTube that sort of cover XPath and sort of the basics. But, XPath can get very complicated, and there are other things in there. So I would just look at some of the things that cover basic XPath. And I think once you sort of combine what I had in that PowerPoint deck with some of the videos, that may make it a lot clearer for how you could leverage that. But if you feel free to reach out if you had something specific that you wanted us to sort of help you with, I'd be definitely happy to put a different set of XPath trees together that might solve a problem for you. All right, Martin, thank you for joining us from Vienna. Definitely appreciate you making the time. And I know it's a Friday night, and I'm always amazed that people choose to of all the things you could do on a Friday night, it is humbling to think you choose to spend it with us. But I am very grateful for that. So thank you, Martin. Oh, Eric, thank you. Great to have you join us live. Always fun. All right, then. I think we have probably... this has gone longer than I thought. We're almost an hour and a half. So I thank everybody for taking the time on a Friday to spend this much time with us, and definitely appreciate that. I think we have some good things planned for next week's show. And I'll be sharing that through the week. But hopefully everybody enjoyed today's show, got a little something out of it. And I will see everybody next Friday. And until then, be safe, be well, take care.